Tonight on Property Ladder, we're following just the one incredible story.
This is massive excavation here. Do you have any idea quite how much soil you're going to have to take away from this site?
It's a basement excavation of epic proportions.
It's digging, 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 and I think, well, this is never going to be done. It's just mud.
And it's a project that pushes our developers right to the edge.
And are you worried about living on top of that?
I've gotten from the point of hysterical to tears to hysteria again.
We're just coming off some of the greatest rises in property prices in the last 20 years, and that's causing inexperienced developers to take greater and greater risks. But beware, the more ambitious the development doesn't necessarily mean the greater the return.
Try telling that to Richard Chan and Isabel Paneo.
We made 30,000 on the last one, and we're aiming to do 10 times as much on this one, so...
At least, so that, you know, we have enough money to go to Australia and be virtually mortgage-free, which is really what we're aiming for.
Don't be fooled by this modest-looking two-bedroom property they've just bought on the outskirts of Chiswick, West London. They plan to double it in size to create an enormous luxury family home. But they're not doing this by something as simple as a loft or side extension. They're excavating tons of earth from beneath the house to make a whole new lower ground floor.
Well, it's going to have a big open plan area with the kitchen and the lounge. It's going to have a utility room, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, so really it's going to be quite massive.
In packed cities where space is at a premium, basement excavations are growing in popularity. They're an effective way to add serious square footage, but they're also very expensive and shouldn't be done on a development unless you're sure you can see a return in the property.
It's a strange little house, actually, isn't it? What made you decide to buy this?
The old couple staying here, when I mentioned the cellar, then told me they had planning permission to build a whole new basement underneath the house, so...
Would you have bought it if it didn't have planning permission?
No.
So you're not worried at all that they didn't do the plans? That was just a bonus that they did do the planning?
Well, it showed us what could be achieved with the land and what was available, which I don't think we'd have seen.
It's amazing. We wouldn't have thought of it, because you don't think of building a whole new, bigger level underneath than the house is.
No, mind you. Maybe there's a very good reason for that.
It's certainly an outrageously bold expansion of this small family home. Richard and Isabel intend to dig out the entire area under the house and most of the garden to create a new lower ground floor nearly twice the size of the existing building. Down here, they plan to build 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and a huge open plan kitchen dining living space that leads out onto a large sunken outdoor area. On the ground floor of the existing house, the layout will be reworked to create another 2 reception rooms and a rather uninspiring entrance hall. Upstairs, adding an extra bathroom will complete a luxurious 4-bed, 4-bath family home.
And this is incredibly ambitious as a plan. Do you have any idea quite how much soil you're going to have to take away from this site? This is massive excavation here.
Yeah, we hadn't quite worked it out
not
properly.
really, no.
I'd have thought it must be at least 30 big lorry loads full of soil that's going to have to be carted away.
When you start talking in those terms, it's big. I think there's going to be lots of sandwich days.
The cost of this development is really going to hurt, but I don't think Richard and Isabel have any concept as to just how much. They bought the property for £395,000. They have an optimistic budget of £210,000, and they plan to sell for £900,000. That would make them a phenomenal £295,000, but I think they've missed one big issue standing between them and their profit: the location.
It's an unusual plot, and it's nice to have a detached house, but it has got a massive block of flats behind it. It's not the smartest part of Chiswick, even though it is Chiswick.
Yeah.
I also think that when this is done, it's going to be hard to sell a family home for £900,000, nearly £1 million, with all this traffic going up and down and up and down. And
yeah, that's a fair comment.
This is not a sort of sleepy little bit of Chiswick, really.
Certain parts of Chiswick have become incredibly popular over the last few years. Wealthy families and young professionals are willing to pay sky-high prices to live off the trendy high road that's now chock-a-block with upmarket bars and boutiques. Crucially, Richard and Isabel's development is a mile away from this bustling centre and worlds apart in terms of property prices.
I also really would revisit what else you can get for 900,000 around here, because you have to think about what it is in its surroundings, and I think that you can probably get more for your money for 900,000 in Chiswick.
It might sound like this development simply doesn't add up, but I think there might be a way to make it pay. In fact, with a little twist on Richard and Isabel's idea, it could be a real money spinner. I think they should be developing it as 2 properties, by treating the existing house and the extension as separate dwellings. The new lower ground floor could easily become a 2-bed flat by giving it its own front entrance. The house above already has its own front door, and a simple refurb would make it a 2-bed maisonette. In today's market, they're still unlikely to get the 900,000 thereafter, but they should get a lot closer.
I've got to say, looking at it, I think it's probably more realistically 700, and if you do 2 flats, they're likely to be worth about 380 each, which is 760. Which actually means that you get more on resale, and it's going to cost less because your finishes don't need to be so good.
I'll have to think about that.
And this is going to be very, very expensive, doing all this work. Have you any idea? Do you know how much?
Yes, the basement, to dig it out and make it waterproof is, I think, 110,000.
And that sounds cheap to me, because I'd have thought just the groundwork and the basement would have cost around 200,000.
No.
Well, we've had quotes from companies that were going as high as 300. But,
just to dig it out.
Yeah.
Wildly different quotes are a warning sign that Richard and Isabel would do well to not ignore. To create the new lower ground floor, they've allowed 110,000, which I think sounds seriously low. For labour and materials, they've allocated 65,000. They're expecting to get a kitchen and 4 bathrooms for 30,000, but they should be spending that on the kitchen alone. For decoration, they have a woefully small 2,000, and the 3,000 they've allocated for all the landscaping and external works feels just as tight. With professional costs and fees coming in at 10,000, their total budget of 210,000 might sound like a lot, but it's simply not enough for this epic build.
Looking at this job, I would have thought it would be going to cost you nearer 3 than 2. 100,000, that is. And
No, not 300. We don't have 300.
how are you planning on funding this?
Well, we've each got properties that we're selling. We're also selling our existing joint property, additional shares that I hold.
There is another property that we have as well that
Yes.
could be sold, which is the flat in Dubai.
Okay, so you've got a flat in Dubai, 3 flats in this country, and you're selling all of them to do this and your shares.
Yes.
Yes.
You are 100% committed on this, aren't you?
Yes, definitely.
Richard and Isabel are gambling everything they own on a development that is totally ignoring the local market. They run the risk of starting their new life in Australia with no more than a few pennies in their back pocket. Today, Richard Chan and Isabel Paneo's big dig starts. They've taken on a gargantuan development and plan to double the size of this house with a massive basement excavation in just 6 months. It's an extremely bold project that does have potential, just not as a single house. I think they should be dividing the property into 2 separate dwellings.
I mean, really, it's all about the project as well as the money, but the project really was something that we wanted to do. And I'm not going down the flat route.
I don't believe Richard and Isabel have done their homework. But it's essential that they get their heads around the local market. And if they stick with their plans, they could make no profit at all. So I'm taking Richard and Isabel to see 2 properties. First is a handsome 4-bedroom family home with a much larger garden. I think their development could struggle to match this property. Even so, it's valued at just $725,000, $175,000 down on what Isabel and Richard are hoping for.
Do you think your finished house will be worth nearly $200,000 more than this?
I think it'll certainly be worth 800. That is the minimal that really we need to sell it for to get the profit we need.
But it's not really about what you need to sell it for, it's about what
the market will bear.
But you can't afford to sell it for less than 8.
Because you want to make your profit on it.
It is a gamble, I agree, but then you have to take a gamble to develop something to make the kind of money we want.
It's not about taking a gamble. It's about developing 2 flats that will guarantee a higher return than a single house. To try to prove my point, I'm taking them to see a 2-bed flat in the same neighbourhood.
Tell me, what do you reckon to this, then?
I love this.
This is better, isn't it?
Yeah.
The people selling this house clearly know the market. With its huge open-plan kitchen living area, 2 double bedrooms and slick modern bathroom, it's just the kind of place that young professionals are prepared to pay a premium for in the area. I'm very interested to see what Richard and Isabel think it's worth.
Thought about 300.
I thought a bit more, between 325 and 340.
This has been valued at £425,000.
I wouldn't pay it.
Which, even if that is a bit toppy, and it's actually worth nearer 400, 2 of those in your house would make it worth £800,000. In terms of your profit, if you really want to make your profit, this is the way to do it.
No, I really want the house.
You really want the house?
I really do want the house, yeah.
It's a project that we'd like to get experience on doing, because in the past we've only had experience with flats.
I think I can see that I'm not going to win this one, am I?
Not the 2 flats, no.
No.
If they insist on keeping it as a single house, I've one final suggestion that could still help them improve their profit margin.
If you scale back the extent that you're digging into the ground, so you lose one of those bedrooms, you've still got a bedroom and a bathroom, and then the whole of that current ground floor, I feel, should be an incredible master suite. Big bedroom, big bathroom with dressing room, and very, very luxurious. And that way you're going to save money by not digging out as much, and you end up with a really luxurious layout for the house.
OK, we'll have a look at that. Definitely.
Fabulous.
My worry is that as a single house, Richard and Isabel will end up with a huge extension that's out of keeping with the property above. But it doesn't have to be. The golden rule is to make sure that any addition works in harmony with the existing property. You'd never guess that this half of the property is a new addition to the 150-year-old original. The extension isn't only in proportion, it uses weathered bricks and tiles so that the join is impossible to spot. An alternative approach is to make the extension a special feature by using completely contrasting materials. But again, the scale of the addition has to be right for the existing building. And that's what I would like Richard and Isabel to try to achieve by reducing the size of their lower ground floor. At the property, digging out the basement has been going on for 2 months and should now be finished, but the job isn't even half done. To make matters worse, Richard and Isabel's own home has sold, and in 4 weeks' time they'll have to move onto the site, whether the house is habitable or not.
You put the door in there, or save the door.
In the hope that they can speed things up, they've employed a completely separate building company to work upstairs on the existing house.
9:30 when I rang him, apparently, There was a guy coming round to actually put a boiler in, but I don't see a boiler there. So I don't know what they've been doing.
Unfortunately, the relationship with the builder turned sour pretty much from the start.
Oh, Andrew, it's Isabel Paneo. I see the boiler's gone, and we need it really because we need to live here until we put the new one. Can you get back to me to find out what it is we can do about it? Thank you. Bye. It's gone to voicemail.
Things go from bad to worse, and 4 weeks later, when the time comes for Richard and Isabel to move in, the house is totally uninhabitable. They're forced to move into a hotel.
Initially, the builder, when he gave us the first quote for the internal work, told us it was going to be 4 weeks. And it's now 9 weeks. We have nowhere to live. It seems to me that the slightest problem, they're down tools and go home. They don't communicate with us. We can't phone anybody. Some days I'm emotionally drained because I'm fighting with them all day long. I have to psych myself up in the morning because I know there's going to be an argument, whatever I say. Yes, well, we came to the conclusion this morning that the internal, but they have to go. They're gone. We cannot work with them.
It turns out the feeling is mutual with the builder.
I think in the 8 weeks, they had 21 significant changes from whether we're having a bathroom, whether the toilet's going here, whether that wall's coming out or not. And yet I've got no idea of what they want. They're not giving me that information. And because they're not there during the day, they're expecting me, for what is a really small job, to come over every night and see them. It's just totally unrealistic and unreasonable.
Managing a project part-time is never easy. Richard and Isabel bring in a new set of builders to finish off the upstairs refurbishment, but it all ends up being both expensive and time-consuming.
Initially, it cost us £14,000, even before we hit problems, and after another £17,000 to get them resolved, and that's £31,000 later, we're only just moving in.
Richard and Isabel need to make some serious cutbacks. Last time I saw them, I thought I'd convince them to dig out less of the basement. Instead, they've come up with an utterly crazy idea regarding the 4th bedroom, and they're trying to sell it to me with this scaled-down basement plan.
But what we thought is we'd have it dug out, but then we'd just block it up with normal walls, so the hole is there should anybody in the future want to use it, but we won't actually do anything with it. We won't develop it.
To save money, they're going to seal up the 4th bedroom suite, leaving it as a hidden chamber never to see the light of day. One of the weirdest plans I've ever heard.
So you'll dig out this room here.
Yeah.
And then you'll board it up.
Yes.
When I said scale down, I kind of meant dig out less. So what will happen when people look round? Will you...
This will not be obvious at all, really.
Will you say there's kind of dead bodies behind there? Will you...
No, we'll tell them there's potential.
Idea is just that we save on the finishing costs, the costs of putting the ensuite in, the bedroom, the electrics, the additional plumbing.
The only thing with having an area that hasn't been finished is it might make people have question marks about the rest of the development. And this is going to be a top-end, really, really perfectly finished house. And I don't think there's any room in that for half-finished bits.
OK, that's a fair point. But, OK.
No, I hadn't thought of it quite like that.
Why don't you just save your money and not dig this wall at all and just have nothing here at all, no wall at all. So it'd be like that. Which, let's be honest, where your budget's going would help.
It would help, yeah.
It would help Richard's budget.
It's not just the budget that would benefit. It would make the size of the ground floor more in proportion with the house above. A few days later, Richard and Isabel have made up their minds.
We've thought about our conversation with Sarah and her idea that we only dig out 1 bedroom in the basement, and we've discounted that. Then we thought about our idea of digging them both out and boarding one up, and we've discounted that as well. And we're scrapping it all and going back to the original plan of having 2 bedrooms, 1 with an ensuite and a bathroom in the basement.
This pair are as unpredictable as they come. In a complete U-turn, they've gone back to their original plan. I'm seriously worried that they won't make the money they need to get to Australia. 4 months into the 6-month schedule, this build is far from finished. A weekend on their own brings the full horror of the situation sharply into focus.
When we first started, we both had the impression that we were told that it was eight weeks to get it dug out and watertight. Week 19 now.
We're still digging. It does seem to us, though, that it's digging, and it's just, there are some days very disheartening, and I think, well, this is never going to be done. It's just mud.
Despite that, they throw themselves into tackling one of this development's biggest problems, the very ordinary small hall in a very expensive house.
What I was saying is, if we put glass bricks here, right? Yes. So you replace this whole wall, like 1930s, and they have... The idea is to get more light in here. So we have a glass door to let the light in there. We have a window, and we're going to have glass bricks that will let the light in through here. And we're going to replace the door with a deco door, which has the big glass in it. That'll let light in as well.
Personally, I don't think Isabel's going far enough. The bottom line is they need a much bolder solution.
Now, the problem is that the front door is here. And the more I think about it, the more I think anyone who's paid £900,000, so nearly £1 million for a house, is going to be really disappointed. There's no great entrance. All the reception space is downstairs, really, isn't it? That's the grand part.
There, yeah.
There's no escaping it. The whole entrance has to be moved, and there's only one place it can go. And that's right here, on the other side of the house, one whole level down.
What I'm suggesting is that you create another new and spectacular entrance into this house. Instead of having a study, you have a front entrance hall. You dig out beyond here, you have an intercom system where the parking space is, and as soon as you get through that gate, you're in this completely private area, and then you're led round the corner through this private garden, down steps, down to the front door here.
Yeah, obviously it will cost more.
It'll cost more, and it'll further put the whole project back. And I mean, it is already, you know,
behind.
It's well behind and well over budget.
I do agree with you. It will set you back and it will cost you more money, but I think to get £900,000, you're going to have to spend the money. And if this was my development, I would certainly do this, and there'd be no question about it.
But it's not my development. The decision is down to Richard and Isabel.
I've always had an issue with coming into the middle of the property, the front door. But when Belle's got her mind set on something, that's usually set in stone. But I think with Sarah, the way Sarah won the argument was talking about the wide terrace where people can walk down to a private terrace, private entrance. And I think that swung her. So now it's all systems go to the front entrance, and I think we should be there in no time.
There really is no choice, but it does add to Richard and Isabel's already ballooning budget. They quickly need to find more money, and it's time for desperate measures.
We've had to go to friends to borrow money. We've taken out a personal loan, and we've gone to extend the mortgage.
Richard and Isabel have taken on a development that is stretching them to the absolute limit. Richard Chan and Isabel Paneo are now 6 months into their development. It should be finished and on the market, but you guessed it, they're still digging. Their original £210,000 budget is history, and with no money to spare, Richard and Isabel have been forced to live on site for the past 4 months. And that's only the beginning of their problems.
The house is basically on stilts. There's 3-metre gaps through all the floorboards. But we have a working bathroom and a warm house, and we've made it. We're here, yeah, to the building site.
Richard and Isabel are laughing, but they have no idea that living on this site could actually be deadly serious. The underneath of the house has now been completely dug out in readiness for the supporting steel pillar to go in. But until it arrives, the whole property they're living in is being held up by nothing more than a few steel supports known as acroprops.
I have to be honest, The one thing that really worries me at this point is that corner pivotal point of the building, and the fact that it's propped up on, the whole building is propped up on a couple of acro props.
Well, I have had this out with the builders, obviously, over the past 2 weeks, and they keep telling me they haven't lost the house yet.
Yeah,
And,
I don't want this to be the first one.
yeah.
I've seen enough developments to know that this is an arrangement that should be checked out fast. Until it is, I don't think Richard and Isabel should spend one more second living above what could be a death trap.
In my experience, to take two sides of a building away, leave the building up there, and then prop it up for any time at all is a little bit dodgy on a couple of acros. I think you'll start to see movement very soon with this house. It's going to start dropping.
Yeah, there already are.
Well, there's cracks appearing everywhere. I
Where?
mean, there's in the archway upstairs. It's the new ceiling in the dressing room's totally cracked, and around the windows there are cracks going up. But
So at all the structural points, the lintels, it's all dropping.
the weak points, yes, it's getting weak.
I mean, are you worried about living on top of that?
I've gotten from the point of hysterical to tears to hysteria again.
Would you agree to not go back in until I get a structural engineer, just to have a second opinion as to how you can guarantee that's not going to fall down?
There isn't anything that a structural engineer would tell us that we don't know. It's all wrong.
No, I know it's wrong. I can see it's wrong. It's just that I think that you need
can.
temporary...
I don't know
You can
anything
see
that I
it as
can.
well.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
But would you, I mean, for your own safety, would you be prepared to not go back in till it's sorted?
we can't. We've run out of places to live, you know.
So is there nothing I can do to convince you? If I get a structural engineer around this afternoon, would you be prepared to stay out that long?
No, we need to
think
live
it's
there.
summer.
There isn't a choice at the moment. We have to be there.
I can't really believe they're going to stick to their guns. Thankfully, a few hours later, Richard and Isabel have a change of heart and allow our structural engineer to come on site. To avoid taking unnecessary risks, he makes a limited visual inspection from outside the basement area.
The building's not safe as it is. The temporary propping underneath the heavy steel beams is totally inadequate. The first thing to do is get some more props in. Work should stop until that takes place. As far as the clients living in the building at the moment, they shouldn't be living in there. It's dangerous. It's adding to the loads, and if the building did collapse, then curtains, I'm afraid.
There are two sides to every story. The builder insists the building is properly supported and the cracking is normal for this type of work. Richard and Isabel decide to play it safe. Not for the first time in this project, Richard and Isabel are back living in a hotel. For the next 2 days, they're holed up until the builder puts in extra supports despite disagreeing with our engineer. Then, eventually, the permanent steel arrives, making the property completely secure.
It finally feels safe as well because there's a lot of cracking up and down the whole house, and all that is stopped.
You can start to get that polyfiller in and start filling in all the cracks, knowing that they won't reappear.
10 months in, with the building safe and the basement built, it's finally possible to see how the property is going to work as one massive house. My word, you're really taking shape now. This is the most tremendous, enormous hole you've dug.
It is, isn't it?
I reckon you would have hit Australia if you'd kept on going.
Probably. I think it would be worth quite a lot more if we did.
And doesn't the house look tiny, sitting sort of peculiarly up there on this incredible space?
It does, but the house looks small. The house was small, actually, come to think of it anyway.
It
Yes.
looks really odd up there, and this amazing bank of doors. These vast doors. Aren't those great?
Oh, lovely.
What an amazing space. What they've achieved down here is incredible, but it will have such a different feel and look from the existing house that it only goes to highlight why this development would still be better as two separate dwellings. It's not too late for them to change their minds, And if they did, they could now stand to make a killing.
The market is with you. It's been very good to you in terms of development. It's been great.
We got it at the right time, really.
Yeah, it's very lucky, but in reality, I mean, I think you'd be quite lucky to get more than about 800 for this, which is going to see you a profit.
No, I think it's definitely close to £1 million or £1 million we're going to get.
I still think that the real way to make money on this would still be to divide it up. And I think it wouldn't be unrealistic for you to achieve nearly £500,000 on the ground floor here and nearly £500,000 on upstairs as well. So you'd be more likely to reach your £1 million level threshold that way than... I mean, it is quite an unusual house. And
Yeah. It's different. There's no other house like it around here. This is for sure.
And there's
But I
none
like
that's
things
gonna...
that are different. I've never liked to have the same as everybody else, so
No.
something different.
So regardless of whether it makes more money or not, you'd want to do a house, you're going to do a house.
I think we will make a good profit on it anyway. And it's the madness of King George, and I will never do it again. But yes.
You got a get out of jail free card. You just don't want it.
No, I really like it as a house.
You're going to have to work very, very hard to make this house work together upstairs and downstairs and not make it feel disjointed in terms of design.
This is a tremendous design challenge, and Richard and Isabel need to get to grips with it right now.
This is going to be the barbecue area, so it needs some lighting coming down, strong light.
So where's the main seating area?
It's going to be sort of around here.
Right. So we need to coordinate that with the focus of the sound system.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've run the cables so far, but we haven't finalised the positioning.
Richard is installing state-of-the-art lighting and home entertainment systems. But it's not the gadgets that will make this house work, it's very well-judged interior design.
Let's just move that right towards the...
Oh, I see what you mean. OK, I think that's better, because the tap's those curvy ones, so it goes everywhere, really. It's quite fun.
Getting the right look is essential to making a profit. But if upstairs is anything to go by, then they could have their work cut out.
So this is all finished.
Almost
Look
there.
at this tap.
Yeah, they're going through the whole house. A waterfall tap.
It's quite a strong boutique hotel style in here with the tiles and the shower head and the tap. Is this what you're going for throughout the house?
It's going to have the same taps through the whole house. We have the sunken bath with the, I call it a rock wall, which is where the tiles sort of come out.
Right.
They're sort of uneven on the one side, so we've got one feature wall in the main bathroom as well.
OK.
It's a bold approach, and into the bedroom it doesn't get any less individual.
And so what's happening in here?
Here we're trying to keep more of the 30s feel of the house, so we've got the windows in that blend with the air. We've got the Tiffany lights, the wall lights, and then we've bought this wallpaper for the back wall as a feature wall. So we have that in there.
And I think the point is that you can go down a great route with design and not have a bland, empty box, but without perhaps going quite as far as this. I mean, you have got a very specific house that you're trying to sell, and I think to try and do anything that's going to narrow the market more than you've already narrowed it is... I mean, it's just a dangerous place, a dangerous game you're playing, and maybe you'll win, but it's very...
So you should keep it more neutral, or...?
Yeah, I mean, without being bland, I mean, you can have a beautifully designed house.
We have everything white. A hospital, mental
Certainly don't think it should all be white. I mean, I think, personally, I think the most important thing is the finish, and that's what you do, you should be beautifully executed, especially in a house of this value.
It's fine to be bold, but overstep the mark and it quickly becomes brash. The owner of this property in Kensington, West London, certainly knows how to pull off a flamboyant interior. The key is to avoid cramming too many themes into one space. Ornate wallpaper can work if it doesn't dominate the room. It's best to keep your most quirky design fantasies to your own home. A good trick is to make sure that your more adventurous touches aren't permanent. The clean lines of this contemporary kitchen are punctuated with a striking chandelier and colourful bar stools. If you really want to go to town, bathrooms are self-contained areas where you can be a little bit more outrageous.
I suppose what I'm saying is, I think you should resist the temptation to have any crazy ideas, because you do have the odd one. And for instance, this door, you left it here, you've plastered it in on the inside. So this is a door going to nowhere, isn't it?
I like the symmetry, yeah, because I like the both. It just seems strange, just one door at the end, and I like the symmetry, but...
It does confuse people, because people come up and use the bathroom and it's locked. They come down and say your bathroom door's locked.
Yes, and then he looks at me as if to say, I told you.
So not too
it's
many...
probably going to be plastered in anyway, because... Well, I am wrong on the odd occasion. I'm right most of the time.
So not too many crazy ideas, yeah?
A week later, Isabel starts pulling together her themes for the house.
We're having a rope lighting underneath all the units in the kitchen and along the island bar. I got all the curtains in Marrakesh, and they have all the cushions to go on the bed that are the same, basically. These are the lights that are going on the wall in this room, one on each side. I hate having the same as everybody else. That's always been a hassle, so I like things that are different. So I'll take things from whatever I've seen, take bits from everything and just try and bring it together to make it a bit different for myself.
Isabel's intent on sticking with her melee of design ideas, but her next decision is one of her better ones. She decides to give this property a facelift, and today, a specialist team are spray painting the entire exterior of the house. Just as they seem to be making real progress, there's another monster problem.
We've got rising damp, which means the water's coming through. It's coming up the walls.
After all this time, the basement is still not watertight. To fix it, every freshly painted wall needs to be stripped back and every newly screeded floor needs to be dug up.
I am pretty livid because, you know, this shouldn't have happened. This is a fundamental basement issue. And, you know, you build basements, you don't do this. Another month that I'm living in basically a hovel, which is, it's a year now, and I've just, you know, come to the end of it. It's just depressing.
The builder's view is the damp problem has been caused by Isabel interfering with his work. Either way, it's yet another major setback in what has become the mother of all developments. Richard and Isabel's huge development has suffered a series of major setbacks. But now the small two-bedroom home they started out with has changed beyond all recognition.
Hiya, how are you? Hiya. God, look at this. So 13 months in, your marathon development's finally finished.
Finally.
Moving the front entrance has done a lot to improve the approach to the property, but I've always felt that it would have been far better developed as two flats. Seeing it finished only reaffirms that belief.
I mean, certainly painting it does go some way towards tying the top and the bottom of the house together, but I still do find them quite separate. They don't feel like the same house.
It does to me. It feels like one whole house. Having lived in all sorts of states, it actually flows quite naturally. It's one nice big house for us.
There's no denying the space they've created in the basement is incredibly impressive. With its high ceilings and masses of natural light, this huge kitchen dining living room has got it all.
So this always was going to be spectacular here, but it's not in any way disappointing, is it?
No, it's pièce de resistance of the whole house.
Actually, to call this a basement is a little rude to it, really. It's much better than a basement. It's a ground floor, isn't it?
Yeah, your idea of making the front door down here instead of up there has definitely sort of made it feel the ground floor.
And this is the offending steel that didn't arrive, so that all of this area here was held up on a few acros, wasn't it? Boy, I have to say I feel a little more confident standing down here than I would have done before.
I'm glad to see that Isabel has resisted the urge to splash her inimitable design statements in here, although she didn't hold back as much in the rest of the development. There's a surprising shift of style in the basement bedrooms, which are a little bit old-fashioned. Upstairs, the design goes off in yet another direction.
quite a mix of styles here. There's a little bit from every decade in the last century, really. A bit of 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, a bit of 1980s.
I don't have any 50s, anything 80s.
Nothing 80s. Do you not think the doors are quite
No,
1980s?
I don't at all.
Don't you?
No. What 50s have I got?
I would say that the banisters are quite 50s. And I personally would have made it much, much more contemporary, partly because it's in Chiswick, and I think that the sort of people who would want to buy it would be expecting something at the top end of design.
It was built in the 30s and I wanted to keep it a bit that way.
The truth is, Richard and Isabel have always been intent on building what they want rather than what the market demands, and I think that will cost them dear.
You were planning on spending 210,000, weren't you?
Yeah.
How much did it end up coming in at?
450.
Crikey. I mean, well, that's £500,000.
It is close.
Right from the start, Richard and Isabel never had a handle on the costs involved in this project, and it well and truly ran away from them. The basement cost rose from 110 to 195,000. The 65,000 they'd allocated for labour and materials went up to 100,000. They kept a tighter rein on the costs for the kitchen and bathrooms, spending an extra 10,000. But the decoration costs soared from 2,000 to 33,000. The 3,000 they'd allowed for landscaping and external works came in at 29,000. And professional costs and fees rocketed from 10,000 to 53,000. The final total for this build went up from 210,000 to a staggering £450,000.
Now, you bought the house for 395,000 and you spent 450,000 on it, so you're in at £845,000.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind you were originally planning on selling for £900,000, that would make you a £55,000 profit. Would that be worthwhile?
No.
Definitely not, no. That would not be.
So, how much do you think it's now worth?
I think we're now looking at £1 million.
That's an awful lot of money. Will the agents think that that's realistic?
Wow. Great use of space. Lovely use of natural light.
They've done really well, the master suite with the dressing area and the ensuite. It's just a real shame about the aspect looking onto the flats.
It's just very disappointing as you go up to the top of the building, the bedrooms are quite small.
I think the problem we're going to have with selling it is the location.
It is a lovely house, great finish. They haven't cut any corners.
I value this property at £825,000.
I value this property at £900,000.
I value this property at £1.1 million.
Well, we have had 3 valuations in, and they have come in at 825 and 900 and 1.1 million.
That's quite a spread.
Yes, there is a big difference. There's £275,000 difference between the highest and the lowest valuation. But there are no other houses around like this, and therefore it is incredibly difficult to value. If you sold for the lowest figure, you'd make a loss of £20,000. If you sold for the highest figure, you'd make a profit of £255,000.
Which is a good profit for the year's effort, and that's really around the area we're aiming at.
I mean, the only thing I would say about the 1.1 million is that I think that's a very punchy valuation.
It's got to be realistic, and I think 1.1, 1.2 is realistic.
The question is, will the viewing public agree?
Oh, look at this. Wow. Very impressive.
Oh, wow.
No, that is nice, isn't it? It's a great room.
Yeah, my wife would like this, actually, a nice walk-in wardrobe.
Very nice at night time, seeing the sky and the stars.
Look at that, you can look straight onto the block of flats in the car park.
I like it, but my only criticism would be the style of furniture. I'm a more minimalist type of chap, so I'd go for more contemporary furniture.
These bedrooms are not big enough. I'm not being funny, but you couldn't even put a chair in a double bedroom for a house that's worth £1 million.
For me, this is one part of Chiswick I wouldn't really like to live. To me, there's too much traffic noise.
This one fills our brief of being quite quirky. quite interesting. So I think I'd probably put an offer of 900,000 if I was to express interest in this property.
This is so close to the M4, so close to the railway, and so close to a car park.
It's not idyllic, which a lot of Chiswick is.
Opinion is divided, but one thing is clear. These buyers don't appear to be prepared to pay the kind of money that Richard and Isabel are hoping for. I still believe that the safest way to make a decent profit on this development is to split it into 2 flats.
I mean, interestingly, the 2 agents who came in at the 825 and the 900 said that 1.1 would be achievable if you had the upper part as 1 flat and the lower part as another flat.
I don't know, I still think we will achieve it without doing it. I have always had the confidence in it.
And this was all about going to Australia, wasn't it?
To raise funds to get there, yeah.
Yeah, and so are you booking a flight to Australia on...
Well, we would, but yeah, we need to actually do another 1 or 2 to really get a bit more, really.
So even though you could stand to make a £20,000 loss on this 13-month development, you want to definitely carry on and do another one?
Oh, definitely, yes.
You've been potty from day one on this, haven't you? And 13 months hasn't knocked any sense into you at all.
No, it's knocked any sense I had out of me.
Richard and Isabel have had one of the toughest journeys on a development that I've ever seen. If they'd done their research before they started out, they could have given themselves a much easier time. Instead, they've been continually fighting the local market, and it looks as if the local market could still win.
Richard and Isabel have put their property on the market for £1.3 million and are waiting for an offer. Next week, it's developing with friends. Is it really just a whole load of trouble?
Watch it! We decided to go out for Sunday lunch, had a few too many beers and decided that, you know what, this property development lark doesn't seem all that hard.
Are you never here?
I'm here as much as I can be.